Proposition 309 would require photo identification for all in-person voters and an affidavit for mail-in ballots, which would include the voter's birth date and either their driver's license number or the last 4 digits of their social security number. Joining us now to debate the merits of Prop 309, we welcome State Senator J.D. Mesnard, who supports the proposition, and Penny Shuren, president of the League of Women Voters of Arizona, a group that is against the ballot measure. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us. J.D., we'll start with you. The idea of requiring photo IDs when dropping off and voting in person, why? Why is it a good idea?
So this is really just an evolution of voter ID laws from several years ago as it relates to going to the ballot, going to the polls and voting in person. And back then we established 3 different ways you could show ID. 2 of them are photo ID. There's a third version that doesn't involve photo ID. This just says, look, if you're showing up in person, we need to be able to match the face to the photo, so you do have to have photo ID. And if you can't afford one, don't have one, like a driver's license number, we'll provide you one for free.
Penny, the photo ID required there to drop off for in-person voting. Why is that not such a good idea?
So, thank you, Ted, for inviting us. Actually, Senator Mesnard, today is a good day because it's National Voter Registration Day. Great conversation on this day. The photo ID is not the issue, okay? What will happen with this act is that currently the photo ID, if you have a photo ID, a legitimate government-issued photo ID, but it doesn't have an address, you do have the option to provide alternate, additional information. When you're at the poll, you want to prove, as you said, who are you? Are you the person that's eligible to vote? And where do you live? The where do you live is so that you get the correct ballot, okay? So let's take that for a minute. What this act will do is it allows for military and passports which don't have an address, but it deliberately excludes tribal IDs. And I'd like to speak about tribal IDs for just a minute.
Okay, I want you to do so, but I want you first to respond to what she just said.
Yeah, so tribal IDs, as long as there's a photo there, it's still okay. So what you're talking about is your driver's license, which has your photo and your address. That's all you would need in that circumstance. If you have any other kind of photo ID that does not have your address on there, so a passport, could be a tribal ID, et cetera, then you have to provide some kind of additional piece of documentation with your address. But in either case, it simply would require a photo ID.
So, so just some data on the tribal IDs, okay? Many of the tribes, here are all the tribes, okay? The Gila River Indian Community, Havasupai Tribe, Hopi Tribe, Navajo Nation, Tohono O'odham, and the San Juan Southern Paiute do not have an ID. And the tribal law says that they can use their tribal ID, meaning thereby they don't have a photo ID, okay? And often they don't also have a very specific address the way we recognize it. Now, what happens is that I agree with you that currently, as a poll worker, you do get to use a photo ID, legitimate photo ID, the ones you mentioned. But actually, in looking at the law this morning that they wish to change, the tribal IDs are excluded because the tribal IDs do not have the photo on them. So they've had opportunity to provide other means of, verifying they are who they are.
Are we talking secondary identification processes here, or there seems to be some confusion?
So it boils down to currently there are 3 ways you can show ID. Your driver's license, a photo ID plus your address, or a non-photo ID with just 2 forms of documentation with your address. It is that third category that would not be allowed anymore. It'd have to be one of the first 2. We don't actually change the first 2 at all. They remain the case. It's just that we're saying that in all cases it does have to at least be accompanied with a photo.
But to Penny's point, does that exclude people?
It does not, no. And to make the point, we actually say if you don't have a photo ID, and this is going to be a fraction, less than 1% of people, probably 0.1% of people, if they don't have a photo ID, we'll actually provide you one for free if it's for voting purposes. Normally, if you go to the MVD, it'd be $15 or something. We'll say, no, if this is for voting, then we'll make sure you have one.
The idea is to keep fraud and abuses in check here. Does this not help that?
So I'd like to know, this act is called Easier to Vote and Harder to Cheat, where we'd like to see more proof or show the evidence that there is a huge amount of cheating that's going on, so to speak, okay, in people when they show up at the polls, that they're being allowed to vote and don't have the proper forms of ID, okay?
Is it not? I mean, is it not hard to cheat right now? I mean, is there cheating going on? Again, why is this necessary?
So I think you do have a crisis of confidence, whether folks think there should be or shouldn't be. There is one, and if we just dismiss it, then you are going to have a situation where people are going to say, why should I bother showing up to vote? I don't believe the results. The fix is in. I've gotten a number of folks who've actually deregistered because they didn't like what's happened in past elections. I think it's undeniable that there are a lot of folks who have lost faith, and this is a very practical way of helping to instill faith in the system. I do want to point out that when it comes to the current process now, again, we're not changing anything on the first two ways you can show ID. It's just saying that in all cases, photo ID must be required.
Back to confidence. The people who don't have confidence right now in the electoral process in any way, shape, or form, is this going to change that?
I think it will. We haven't actually talked about the other piece of the bill, which is about mail-in ballots.
Yes, we're going to get to that. Yes.
We don't have any ID there, and so I do think when you have a system where 90% of folks are voting in a way that doesn't involve ID, you are going to start to see people have some serious questions.
Is that voter suppression if you dismiss concerns and people just say, "I don't trust it, I'm not voting"? Is that a way of voter suppression?
So when Senator Mesnard says that, this will build back the confidence, in fact, how do you build back the confidence when you've excluded, when I bring up the fact that you're excluding in all the tribal nations, whether you agree that there are a large number or a small number, from participating in voting, okay? So, I think this argument about the confidence being suddenly bolstered by excluding people is not something that I would agree with.
Okay, let's get to the mail-in ballots here. Why not give a birth date and either the last four digits of your Social Security or your driver's license? Make sure there's more than a signature there to, again, give people some confidence that security is in order.
So, if I may, you have already proven your eligibility to vote, because when you register, you are not automatically able to vote until all the proof of documentation is provided before you can vote. When you actually go to vote, and I want to make this connection, is that in-person voting, you come to the ballot, you show us who you are, okay, regardless of the fact that we don't agree that the lists are the way you describe it, sir, but there is a way for you to show who you are and where you live. A mail-in ballot, to even receive a mail-in ballot, you're also doing the same thing. When you receive the ballot in person and you go and cast the ballot, you're not being asked to sign an affidavit again. When you receive the mail ballot, which is the same process, you've received the ballot, now you have to go beyond the signature to give these two pieces of information. I may also point out the unintended consequences. Do you forget how to sign? No. Could you forget or transpose a number of your driver's license or something? So you've really opened up the door to throw out ballots for a simple mistake.
Is duplicative here? Is this really necessary considering all the safeguards? And this was not a problem until someone in particular said it was a problem, and now confidence is gone and we're taking all these extras. Is this necessary?
So a couple of things. I do think it's a misunderstanding that a trust in the election system eroded just entirely in 2020 in the eyes of some. Even before 2020, you were starting to see people with concerns as mail-in ballots became the predominant way people voted. And it took days or weeks in Arizona to count them. And on election day, there appeared to be one outcome, and as the votes were counted over days or weeks, that outcome changed.
But there were explanations for those things.
Sure, yeah. One would say the late folks voted a different way than the early folks.
Exactly.
But you could see that in sort of human nature is what is happening. There isn't the closure on election day. All that to say is I do think there's a lot of mistrust. And so the question is this a reasonable public policy? In any case, in everyday life when you go to the bank and they ask for ID, or you call them and they're just going based on your voice. They ask for these types of things. When you go to register to vote, these are the exact things they ask for, which is why we use them in the bill so they could cross-reference what they have on file. So these are not actually new things.
But the idea of exposing your birth date, the last 4 digits of your Social Security, maybe your driver's license here, is it good to include that kind of information with one's voting preferences?
So, well, that's all stuff they have. It's just on the envelope with the affidavit. And just to be clear, this isn't creating the requirement of an affidavit. That already exists. This is just adding information that must be included with it. And it's just the way they match the envelope or the ballot that arrives with the voter file. They then remove the ballot from that envelope and it goes in the stack. They're not comparing anything at that point. It's just for verification
But
purposes.
to Penny's point, if someone makes a number backwards or someone gets a signature that doesn't look, signatures are different because those are matched up right now. But if some of this information doesn't exactly match or is smudged or isn't clear, is that voter suppression?
So even now, in the current system, you can have those types of situations pop up. The signature doesn't match. And so in any situation that's not involving going to the polls, and in this case, voting by mail, which let's not forget, is a convenience. Okay, voting by mail is not itself a right. Voting is the right, and we have extended this convenience. And so we try to make sure that system is secure. And from time to time, someone may not sign the affidavit, and the poll workers, or the election officials rather, will reach out to the voter to try to confirm that information. That's what will happen here.
Okay, so if there are minor mistakes like that, it sounds like there would be an attempt to try and correct the mistakes or match it up.
So there'll be the amount of resources needed to verify 3 pieces of information is much more than verifying 1 piece of information. Second is, Senator Mesnard, if indeed there was a lack of confidence in the mail system, the county recorders are reporting that there is an 80% and an uptick in a request for mail ballots. I am not ready to accept this notion that this will suddenly change the confidence. So 1, there's 3 more pieces of information. Curing will take a little longer. 2, there's a whole concern about identity theft. Why would you have access to all that information? You've already been proven to have you're eligible to receive a ballot. Okay, why should you now again have to show additional information to cast your ballot?
Last point on this. Again, that duplicative nature here, it just sounds like it's not necessary.
Well, I understand some folks are saying it's not necessary because they think the system works perfectly. What I do know is that 80 or 90% of people are voting without showing ID, and that's done by mail. Without this, there would continue to be no ID when you mail in your ballot.
Last point, Penny, it safeguards everyone's right for a fair and honest election. Got a point there?
No. It takes away the privacy, the most important privacy a voter has in casting their vote.
Penny Sharon, League of Women Voters of Arizona, and State Senator J.D. Mesnard, good conversation. Good to have you both here.
Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.